And because there are so many people online who are not able to potentially establish those relationships in real life, they can build whatever identity, community, and purpose they want.
Following the horrific terrorist attack on Muslims in New Zealand, where 51 people were murdered, it can be hard to understand why this hatred exists, why it consumes some people, why it's no longer in the corners of society, but now it's front and center. So I want to share a few clips here. So these first two clips are going to be from Christian Piccolini. He is a former neo-Nazi who is now part of the Free Radicals Project, trying to get youth out of these situations where they have become radicalized by white supremacy. So this, anytime an attack like this happens, or there's, the Charlottesville protests where you had neo-Nazis marching in Charlottesville, I always go to Christian Piccolini because he, again, is a former neo-Nazi. He understands how these organizations operate, how they brainwash people who are weak-minded. So let me play this first clip discussing how essentially neo-Nazis mainstreamed their message.
In the 80s and 90s, the white supremacist movement had a very concerted strategy to mainstream. We recognized back then when I was involved that we were too edgy. Our shaved heads, the tattoos were putting off the average American white racist. So we decided that we needed to look like them, sound like them, and go where they were. So we encouraged people to grow their hair out, to trade their boots in for suits, and to get jobs in law enforcement, and to go to the military and get training, and also to run for office if they had a clean record. And the fruits of that labor are now coming to fruition. But I can tell you that even 30 years ago, I never would have guessed that we'd be in this position today. But I can tell you also 30 years ago, we didn't have a propaganda center and a command post on Pennsylvania Avenue.
So essentially, what this movement has done, these white supremacists, their strategy is dog whistling. So you'll see people like Ben Shapiro or Dave Rubin or some other asshole conservative pundits talk about, oh, no, these people aren't racist. No, Trump's not racist. No, these people, no, it's not. If they're racist, if they were white supremacists, if they were neo-Nazis, well, they would just come out and say it. Why? Why would they say it? Their whole purpose is to recruit more people. Why would they go with the message that is on its face the most obvious hateful message that turn a lot of people off immediately? Why not go and try to convince them with some dog whistling, with not really discussing how we hate other people, but bring them in and show them, hey, look at these stats. Oh, white people have done all these great things. They're trying to get rid of us because the more that people procreate that aren't whites, well, they're going to eliminate all of us white people in the future. Isn't it important to keep our white culture? That's all part of their strategy. That's all dog whistling. These are all Nazis. So understand here, they are hiding in plain sight. That is their purpose. This is not a situation where you have people that, oh, maybe they're racist, maybe they're not racist. No, they're fucking racist. These are hate-filled people working on weak-minded individuals to try and recruit them to their movement. Now, to go farther into that, here's a clip of Christian Piccolini talking about how exactly these groups use the internet to recruit people who are young and may have some issues that these groups are able to work on to get them to recruit into their movement.
As far as the internet goes, let me paint a picture of who may be on the internet. It's not just our friends and dog pictures, but there are millions of marginalized, alienated, broken young people who are looking for identity, community, and purpose in real life and can't find it there, but they can find it online. And the internet has become flooded since the 2016 election, and even just before that, by propaganda and conspiracy theories coming in from Eastern Europe and from Russia. And it's very difficult to not land on some of this propaganda. but they're also going to some of the most, the places where some of the most vulnerable people are, depression forums, online autism forums. They're talking to our children over headsets when they're playing multiplayer gaming, and they're trying to recruit them with these narratives that are mimicking what the president is saying. And because there are so many people online who are not able to potentially establish those relationships in real life, they can build whatever identity, community, and purpose they want. And the narratives are being given to them. And this has become the fastest growing underground social movement that I've ever seen in my life.
What do you mean online autism forums?
So discussion forums where people are discussing, living with autism, or even Facebook groups. But it doesn't stop there. They're going to where vulnerable people go to find help, to talk to other people, or even where young people might go where they're looking for that sense of identity, community, and purpose. This is really no different than what I used to do 30 years ago, when I used to look for vulnerable people outside of arcades or outside of punk rock concerts or skate parks. Because the idea is you are banking on the fact that somebody there is going to feel marginalized, is going to have what I call potholes that deviated their path, those things that appear in life like trauma, abuse, poverty, mental illness, that maybe alienate them from the rest of society, and then they promise them paradise.
So understand just how sick this is. These groups go into spots of the internet where people are dealing with serious issues. Maybe they have depression, maybe they have autism, maybe they have severe social anxiety, maybe they're online gaming. Now, look, I play online games, but a lot of people that play online games are lonely individuals. And it's easier to go into a situation like that where you are more likely to find somebody who may feel outcasted from society while playing an online game. And again, these forums, incels are a huge breeding ground for this kind of thinking. And look, I understand this because when I was younger, I dealt with severe social anxiety. There's a potential that I could have been grabbed at some point in my life when I was incredibly weak-minded, when I was incredibly lonely. I could have potentially been grabbed by a movement like this. Anybody is a target. Anybody that is dealing with these sorts of issues, that has that hole in their life, as he calls it, a pothole, that have that hole in their life that they're trying to fill. So this just, it's disgusting. And I just want people to understand that if you have people in your life like this who appear separated from society, who seem shut off, you have to reach out to them. You can't let them be taken in by these hateful movements, because there is a high percentage chance that they can be taken in because they'll feel accepted into a movement like that. So people need to understand that hate doesn't come out of nowhere. Like the people that are spreading it, they work on individuals that are the easiest to get. People that are weak, people that are lonely, people that don't have anybody else to talk to. This is what they do, and it's effective. There are a lot of people now, because of the way that society has developed, there are a lot of people now that feel outcasted from society for whatever reason. And those are the people that these hateful groups are working on. Now, this last clip here I want to show you is it's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She was at at South by Southwest. Now, this clip here hasn't been played very often, but I think it's so important because here she discusses how she talks to people that may be racist or may disagree with her. Watch.
So the way I have conversations with people of opposing beliefs is I don't try to convince them of anything. So that's the first thing. Stop trying to win people over. Stop trying to enter a conversation thinking that you're gonna them into changing their mind. And so I think that, we've kind of lost the art of conversation. So when I enter a conversation with someone, I actually try to learn more about where they're coming from. Like, I actually use it as an experience to, let's say I'm talking to someone who's saying something really racist and they don't even realize that they're saying something really racist. I ask them questions because I'm interested. I'm fascinated by that. How does that work, you know? But really, and so I don't do it in a way that's like mocking, but I ask questions to kind of dig, like, you know, when someone says, oh, this isn't racist, why? But we have to learn to like really disarm ourselves in these conversations, first of all, because we approach them with so much hostility, and like they get mad and we get mad and all of these things, so part of it is like emotional work, and the second part of it is intention. Like, what are you trying to get out of this conversation? And if you're just trying to argue with someone, it's not going to work. You know, you believe what you believe, they believe what they believe. So I think the thing that we have to do is try to have a good faith interaction of trying to learn more about where the other person comes from. Because often what I find is that when I do win people over, it's almost never in the conversation itself that I've won someone over. It's that I have a conversation with someone, I ask them some critical questions, and I pretty calmly explain to them, well, this is where I'm coming from, and this is why I believe what I believe. Why do you believe what you believe? And you kind of like leave the conversation, but very often that person will sit on what you said, and they will sit on the fact that you respected them and gave them space. And then very often I've had interactions like that, and I'll run into that person again a week later, a month later, etc. And they said, you know what? You said something that I really thought about and I changed my mind. But no one ever changes their mind in the actual acute situation of a conversation. It's like afterwards when it kind of sits with them. But if you rush in, you know, fully armored up, attacking them and making them feel defensive, they will never listen to anything that you have to say. So it's really about learning how we can have a conversation again. And also there's a really important conversation about good faith and bad faith conversations. And when I sense that someone is engaging in me in bad faith, I just don't engage the conversation at all. It's not worth my time or my energy. If someone's trying to put you down or belittle you or approach a conversation as though they are more intelligent than you, because like, oh no, there's no way that someone can disagree with me and still be smart. You know, there's this like, there's this very condescending tone that we have in a lot of our conversations. And I think it's important to really approach those kinds of disagreements with a lot of compassion, because when they see that, you know, people really look at not just the logic of your argument, but how you make them feel. As much as people hate to say that and admit it, it's true.
Yeah, I think that's good advice and really hard advice, because I think there's a lot of talk about kind of emotional labor. Yeah. The idea of having to put out emotional labor is controversial, right? Because nobody should have to. But I think the reality is that if you don't approach these conversations in a certain kind of way, you don't get the results that you like. And I do find I found myself in these conversations a lot when I'm traveling around doing reporting trips around the country, and was once in a car with a bunch of other not white reporters, where the Uber driver started saying some things that were like a little less than kosher, and everyone jumped in and kind of, I think, in my defense is what it was about. And I was like, we've got 44 minutes till we get to Des Moines, and I need this not to escalate. And what ended up happening was that giving the driver a little bit more space, he basically talked himself out of his own racism using I needed to give him enough rope.
That's right. That's right. I was just, Austin's a very special place for me because this is one of the first places where I actually organized young people. And I have this mentor, and one of the best pieces of advice that he gave me is always give someone the golden gate of retreat, which is give someone enough rope, give someone enough compassion, enough opportunity in a conversation for them to look good changing their mind.
Yeah.
And it's a really important thing to be able to do, because if you're just like, oh, you said this thing, like, you're racist, and when now you're forcing that person to say, no, I'm not, like, etc., there's no golden gate of retreat there. Yeah. The only retreat there is to just barrel right through the opposing opinion.
Yeah.
All right. that clip was kind of long, but I think it was important to show it all because this is a conversation that we don't often have. And it's how to actually approach conversations with people who may be misinformed or even racist. So you have to approach these conversations, especially in person, with compassion, with openness. Be willing to approach a conversation where you are not going at the person because they're wrong about something. Allow them to be able to talk themselves out of it. Even if it's not in that conversation, it allows them to think about it and potentially change their mind down the line. So be open, ask people questions, ask them why they think what they think, and then tell that person why you think what you think, and then just leave the conversation. Allow them to sort of sit with that on their own. Now, this is something, again, that is more effective in person, but I even try to do this now online, which seems crazy considering Twitter and YouTube comments. But look, there are people that have come at me, just as one example. There are people that come at me now, Canadians, for not covering enough Canadian content. And I get it. So, as an example, over the weekend, somebody on Twitter was really angry at me. I mean, using angry language because I wasn't covering their premiere in their province. And the first tweet I began to write was anger back. And I stopped myself. I deleted the what I had begun to type, and I typed something different. And I allowed the person to... I allowed myself to embrace the criticism that person had and put myself, first of all, in their position. So I completely understood why that person was angry at me for not covering their shitty politician in their province, somebody that definitely should be covered. That said, I'm one person and I do a lot of editing, a lot of research. I'm not able to cover everybody's politician in whatever province, in whatever state. So I'm obviously going to miss some stories. And I discussed it in a way where I would hope that person would understand where I'm coming from, while at the same time, I also communicated why I understood their anger at me. So again, it's all about how you approach these conversations. Now, obviously, that's a situation where, this person is not racist, is not far gone, so it's a little different. But even in situations with people who are racist, who may have really crazy views, may be incredibly misinformed on issues, you have to approach these situations, these conversations with compassion. Allow the person to know that there is somebody on the other side of their argument that is not hating them, that is not hateful in their rhetoric, and it is in fact open to what that person is saying, but also understanding that, oh, okay, I didn't understand why that person had that view. Now I understand why that person has that view. And it allows the person you're talking to potentially change their mind with that new information that you've given them, with why you have whatever view you have that's different than theirs. So this is what helps me deal with these sorts of terrible situations, like a terrorist attack from a white supremacist. Understanding why hateful people are hateful, and that oftentimes, or almost, all the time, it's because of situations in their life. Something happened to them, or their mind is not in the right place for whatever reason, and maybe they were grabbed by a certain movement at just the right time where they were able to be brainwashed by that hateful movement. So it's all about, when you better understand why hate exists and why it spreads like wildfire, you're better prepared to deal with it and potentially change people who may be on the cusp of that hate.